To je to. O, još minut. Ma ne, nema problema, sve pet.
Okay, so we are ready for presentation number 2. Now we have Matija Kos. Matija works at Croatian Armed Forces, so besides doing his threat intelligence and stuff like that, he can probably beat you up, so be nice to him. He'll talk about hackers don't hack, they log in, the threat of the stolen credentials, because why hack someone, why phish someone, why spearphish someone if you can just buy credentials, steal credentials, stuff like that. So Matija, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So, hello everyone. As Mr. stated, my name is Matija Kos, and I'm here today to talk to you about a topic that is not as movie-like as XZ vulnerability or putting pineapples on the back of drones and stuff like that. No, I will talk about a topic that, in my opinion, brings the biggest return on investment for the attackers and is hilariously easy to do. And that is the use of infostealer data to gain initial access. Because, as he said, why would you hack if you can simply log in? And just to be clear, I won't show you where to get this infostealer data, but it rhymes with something like download Telegram and search for the word logs, maybe with a Z on the end. I'll just leave it at that. So on that note, let's start with some motivation. This is a table that I've pulled from AnyRun, and it shows the most widely spread malware in the last year. As you can see in the top 8, there are actually 3 stealers, and Luma stealer taking place number 1 as the most widely spread malware in the last year. On top of being the most widely spread, according to this report from CISA, you can see that the use of valid accounts to gain initial access is a technique that has the highest success rate, followed only by spearphishing links. Furthermore, according to this report from Verizon for the last year, you can see that the use of compromised credentials to exploit web application takes center stage here. And if you take anything away from this presentation, I'd like it to be this post from VX Underground, because it sums up everything that we will talk about here in kind of a funny way. So I'll read it in full. People are paying thousands of dollars for educational courses on initial access vectors. We'll provide you a step-by-step guide on how to get initial access to companies with a budget of $0. All it requires is some time, effort, and the ability to grab. So step 1 is go to Telegram. Step 2 is get free stealer logs. Step 3, look for VPN credentials. Hope there is no MFA. If there is MFA, just spam requests. And you'll be surprised in how many times that actually passes, because people just get annoyed and click accept or continue. If that fails, go back to step 1, but if it succeeds, log into VPN, go to Jira, Kanban, or whatever they use, scrape everything when people are sleeping, log out, and profit. Congratulations, you're now the most dangerous hacker on the planet. Does this sound absurd? Of course it does. Does it work? Yes. Literally every single day. Info stealers are a giant problem. They don't need to target enterprise environments with top-notch security. They only need to target lazy home users with security settings probably disabled, downloading junk binaries. Yeah, fun, right? To give even more legitimacy to all of these claims, these are some of the biggest breaches that happened last year, and they all stem from the use of compromised credentials gained via exploiting infostealer data. So I hope we are all motivated now, because in this presentation, we'll take a look at 3 aspects. The first one is the aspect of the attacker that actually infects the victim with infostealers. The second one is another attacker that uses the data provided by the first attacker to then infiltrate the organization, deploy ransomware, exfiltrate the data, or just extort the organization. And the third one is actually this aspect of the cyber defenders who have to defend against both targets, both threats. So in the first part of the presentation, we will put our hacker hats on, and we'll explore this infostealer ecosystem. we'll see that it is as a service, as everything is today. There is a lot of vibrant ecosystem stuff. We will explore that firstly. Then we will talk about some detection challenges, and we'll look at detection from two aspects. The first aspect is the one of us trying to detect the actual infection with infostealer malware. And the second one is us trying to detect that someone is actually using compromised credentials to gain access to our systems. Then we will transition into some defense strategies that we can hopefully use in order to prevent this kind of attacks. Then we will talk about what we can do and how can we succeed even after we fail, because inevitably we will fail. And then we'll try to finish with some lighter note, with some conclusion. So let's start from the beginning. How does one actually get infected with those info stealers? This is just one of the examples that I'll highlight here. Most of the time, it starts with some social media site where some influencer will talk about, for example, cryptocurrencies. What the attackers will do is they will either try to typo squat that original influencer, or they will simply respond to the post that the influencer makes. So, as I said, if the influencer is talking about cryptocurrencies, then the attackers will paste in some links for cryptocurrency multipliers, which will double your crypto, make you rich overnight. If the victim clicks on one of those links, they will probably be redirected to Telegram, where they will be presented with the fake captcha, or a way in a way that they have to verify themselves in order to then download the executable file or whatever they want to download. They have to open their Windows Run dialog box, they have to open their terminal or whatever they use, paste something in blindly, and press enter. So these are those fake captchas, and I'll be the first one. I really didn't think that these will be as widely spread as they are, because I really didn't think that people will actually do this, but as you will see later on, they actually do, and it's quite prevalent. After the initial command is executed, one of these two options can happen. For example, the first one on the left, the second stage PowerShell script is loaded and executed. It fires a post request to attacker's C2 infrastructure saying something like script executed successfully, downloads, in this case, for example, e.loader, which then delivers the final payload, which is then, for example, LumaStealer. The other thing that they can use or leverage is this mshta.exe. mshta is that Microsoft binary for executing HTA files or HTML applications. And note to self, make pictures bigger. It's just a blob. So if you take out the script tags, you would see, and deobfuscate them a bit, you would see it's just 6-line JavaScript code, which loads a mental loader in this case, which then delivers again the final payload, which is LumaStealer. So in both cases, either it be from e.loader or a mental loader, the end result is the same. You are infected with infostealer. The malware will spread across your system. It will try to exfiltrate the data out and send it to either the attacker's C2 infrastructure or directly to their Telegram via Telegram API. And those are, we will explore those later. It's called live chats or live channels, because from the moment of the infection until the data is publicly available, it takes only a couple of minutes. So that's really scary stuff. Not to make it all about these social media platforms and not to speak badly of X or Telegram, there have been a lot of examples where some legitimate sites were compromised, and the sites that are ranking highly on those Google ads, so when you type something in, those are probably the first sites that you would see. A lot of them have this verification step. When you land on the site, you have to click that you're not a robot. And I know in order to verify that you're not a robot, you're presented with these verification steps, where you have to press that Windows plus R key to open that Windows Run dialog box, blindly press Control V to paste something in, and press enter. But if you, yeah, I know. But if you pause for a bit, you would see something like this. And if you explore this verification step even further, you would see that it actually adds an event listener to the click that you're not a robot, and then it pastes this text into your clipboard. It actually says PowerShell.exe followed by the flags EC and some base64 encoded string. If you decode this string, you are presented with either of these two options. It's either that mshta for executing HTA files, or it's something more simpler. You use invoke web request to download the file and execute the content of that file with IEX. Again, the result is the same. You are infected with infostealers. They will try to masquerade themselves, hide themselves, or inject themselves into some legitimate Windows applications, for example, BitLocker to go. Furthermore, to not make it, again, all about fake captchas, they are just the current hype. The threat attackers will also use more traditional ways or traditional approaches in which to share these info stealers. So they will probably hijack some famous YouTuber account that is talking about video games, and then they will talk about click on this link to download some game cheats or game cheat engines and stuff like that. And to highlight the fact that they also keep up with the current hypes and the current hype train, there have been a lot of examples where DeepSeek AI tools were impersonated by info stealers on PyPy because they are specifically targeting developers because they know that the developers have access to highly sensitive stuff. So if you are then someone, and I'm not saying that you should do this, if you are someone who wants to find this stealer log data, you would go to, for example, a Luma Stealers page. You are presented with this because nothing happens on a clear web. You have to click on one of these links, and you will be redirected to a Telegram channel, automated Telegram channel, where you are interacting with the bot. And you will be presented with this slider first, where you just slide through the pages, and you can find some specific countries that you're interested in. Click on that, and you can download stealer log data for high price of $1. These are fresh stealer logs because they only upload the stuff that they gathered the day before. So if you click on this, top up your balance because you don't have $1 on your account, you can click on this, top up your balance, and you are presented with this wall of text. Nothing special. It's just a subscription plan because who doesn't love subscription these days, right? You have some experienced plan, professional plan, corporate plan, and each plan gives specific filters or customizations that you are able to do with the data that you are provided. If you want to go the further or more red hatty way, you can join affiliate program because everything today is as a service, and so are info stealers. You can join to be an affiliate. You will pay some small subscription fee or monthly fee to the actual group that made the info stealer, and you would get access to their dashboard. On the dashboard, you have the ability to customize the actual info stealer binary in order to closely resemble the things that you wanted to look for. For example, if I'm a guy that's interested in finding cryptocurrencies, I'm not necessarily interested in cookies. I will try to further adjust the actual info stealer code to closely resemble the things that I want to look for example, cryptocurrency wallets in this example. And the fun thing here is that as an affiliate, you are only obliged to pay to the actual info stealer group. Everything that you collect is yours to do with whatever you want. So you can sell it, resell it, give it out for free, or do whatever you want with it. And most of affiliates or affiliate gangs will try to promote themselves by giving away a lot of data for free in order to try to convince people to come and join their subscription plan and not the actual Luma Stealer, for example. Some of the formats that they give out are this on the left is format called URL log pass. We will talk about that later on. This middle one is the actual raw stealer log data. So it's actually the things that they extract from the system. And we will see why they are the most scary one and the most dangerous one. And this is one of the formats that if they exfiltrate the data to their C2 infrastructure, they can parse the data out looking for specific services. And they will dump the credentials of those specific services into TXT file and just give it away for free. So for example, they can look for FTP credentials, cPanel credentials, or whatever else. So firstly, let's explore this raw stealer log data, the most dangerous one. How it looks when you download that RAR file or zip file or whatever, unzip it, untar it, or do whatever you want with it. You are presented with this subfolder structure. Each subfolder here is actually one infected machine. And most of the time, they're structured like this. So you have a 2-letter country code followed by some identification of the victim. If you double click on one of these folders, you are presented with this subfolder structure of all the data that InfoStealer malware actually gathers from the victim or the infected machine. So it ranges from autofills, cookies, Discord tokens, file grabbers, because a lot of time file grabbers are actually ingested into InfoStealers, and they will grab the content of your downloads folder or your desktop folder. They have also been cases where they will specifically look for your locally encrypted password vaults, from example, from KeePass. And they will extract that file out, encrypted vault, and they will look for KeePass extension in your browser, try to find the master password, and exfiltrate the master password also. So in that case, they will have both the encrypted vault on their system and the master password, and they're off to the races. The thing that I want to highlight here is this password clipboard.txt, which is actually a familiar site. It's actually that PowerShell.exe with the flags EC followed by some base64 encoded string. These are those fake captchas. And all these subfolders in the data that I've collected have these as the last command which the victim ran before they were infected. The thing to note here, and the things that I like to highlight here, is these cookies folders. It contains multiple TXT files corresponding to the browsers that the victim has on their machines. So for example, if the victim has Opera or they have Chrome or Brave, it will create corresponding TXT files and dump the cookies from that browser into the TXT file. Most of the time, the cookies will be in this Netscape format. We'll talk about that later on. Another thing here is this passwords.txt, which is actually what most of the people think of when they are presented with the term infostealers. It contains nothing but the data that has URL, usernames, and passwords. So not that they have to brute force the attacks, so not that they have to brute force the attacks and they know only the usernames and passwords, they also know the actual URLs the credentials were used to. And I'll restrain myself from commenting these strong passwords here. So not that it would matter if they even had a stronger password, but the password was saved into their Chrome or Brave password manager in the browser, it would be extracted out here in the plain text, same as all these other passwords. But it would be nicer to see that we are not still in this day and age suffering from the plague of basic or simple passwords. By the way, none of these passwords work. It doesn't matter how I know they don't work, trust me. So this another thing that I'd like to highlight here is this user information.txt, and we will see the content of that file later on and why it is super scary when used in the combination with the cookies. So if the attacker parses these passwords.txt files from all the other logs and extracts out only the URLs, usernames, and passwords, and delimits them with colons, they're presented with this URL log pass format or ULP format. It looks nothing special. It's just URL colon username email colon password spread across multiple millions of lines in a single TXT file. And most of the time they will give out this for free. What another attacker can do then is they can sift through or rip grep through all these TXT files. Rip grep is nothing, just a faster implementation of grep, searching for specific terms. For example, they can search for remote desktop credentials. They can search for cPanel or cPanel ports. They can search for Jira, for example. And the thing here to note here is that even if, let's say, for example, our administrator has access to cPanel, they get infected with infostealer, but in some miraculous way, the credentials for the actual cPanel haven't leaked. What the attacker can do is they can find the username or the actual email that our administrator uses, rip grep all the other TXT files for that username, see what other passwords the administrator uses, and hope that they reused one of those passwords in order to log into cPanel. And in that way, they can actually get access to our systems. Another thing here is that Android devices or mobile devices are not exempt from all of these threats. Infostealers work as well on Android devices, where they will also extract the service, the actual username, and the plain text password. If they further refine this TXT file and extract only usernames and passwords, dump that into a file, those files can be used for some brute force attacks, but I just hope that in this day and age, our defense systems are well suited to defend against brute force attacks. So those are not as special for this presentation. Okay, now we've seen that it is a vibrant ecosystem. Now we will talk about some detection challenges that we face when trying to firstly detect the actual use of malware on our systems. And then we will transition into defense challenges that we face when we are trying to detect that someone is using compromised credentials to gain access. Some traditional approaches in which infostealers work have a lot of bottlenecks and a lot of problems. Why? Because infostealers are executed on a victim's machine, so they can be detected by AVs or EDRs or whatever defense strategies that our organization uses. There are also a lot of operational bottlenecks because they're trying to spread this malware as widely as they can. And when they're trying to exfiltrate the data, there will be a lot of inconsistencies. Either it be from the rate of the infection or the actual format in which the data was exfiltrated out. Also, as I said earlier, malware is executed on victim's machine, and in a lot of cases, the actual CTI researchers or analysts will quickly create IOCs and alert AVs or EDRs. But as everything in cybersecurity is a cat and mouse game, so are the guys that are creating some more innovations in this space. Some of the innovations include these server-side info stealers. I don't necessarily agree with the name, but it is what it is. How it works, it's actually the victim gets infected with malware. It doesn't exfiltrate the data out immediately. Instead, it creates an onion service on that machine and posts only that onion address to the attacker C2 infrastructure. What the attacker can then do is they can create custom scripts targeting specific things and then get the data out via GET request. So your system in that case is acting like a passive file host. In a lot of cases, this data is too small for AVs. They will not trigger or they will not detect this kind of traffic. Or why even go that far? Most of the time, they will just give away this store onion service that they've created on a victim's machine for away in order to then the buyer of this onion to then create their specific scripts and get the data out that they want to get out. Okay, now we transition into detecting the actual use of compromised credential on our system and what are some challenges that we face here. So what the attackers can do, and most of the time they only use these URL log pass formats, they can go to the URL and just try, retry, re-retry until they get in our systems. The thing that stops this immediately is 2FA. But the thing to note here again is if we are using email as 2FA, most of the time when you put in the username and password, it would say, we've sent a code to your email, and then boom, your email. What the attackers can do is look for that email across credentials, find out possible passwords, log into that email if they succeed, and then they have both the sides of the equation. What the thing that you can do here is use some stronger means of MFA, for example, TOTP. TOTP would stop most of these attacks. But also, what the attackers can do is they can leverage these raw stealer log data in a way that's known as session hijacking and further enhanced with this user information.txt. For this use case, let's say that the account that the attacker wants to get in has strong password, so the password wasn't reused anywhere else. It is long, it has multiple characters, it has lowercase, uppercase, it has symbols, whatever. And the victim is also using TOTP. So they've done everything that they can according to all the cybersecurity good practices and stuff like that. What the attacker can do is they can leverage raw stealer log data. They can open up this user information.txt file in which they would find all the data about the system. So the stuff ranging from location to current language to screen size, time zone, operating system, available keyboards, hardware, or whatever on the system. And they can use something known as anti-detect browsers. It is a browser that allows the testers to pre-configure the browser in a specific way in order to test the actual service. What the attacker will do is they will go on this site, and this Go login it's a paid service, but you have 7-day free trial, so go nuts. It allows you to set up, as I said, pre-configured stuff for your browser. So the attacker can set specific proxies or VPN into the country of the actual victim. They can set up the time zone to match it because they know it from user information.txt. They can set up CPU because they know it from hardware. They can set up RAM because they know it from hardware. They can set up user agents because they know it from this user agents folder. They can set up screen resolution, language, platform, all this in order to closely resemble the actual victim that they are trying to mimic. And the final thing that they will do is they would click on this cookies tab here, and in that cookies tab, they will put in the cookies from this folder, or the session cookies from this folder. As I said, the cookies in this folder are most of the times set in this Netscape format. And one of the things here is this number field in that Netscape format, which shows you when the cookie will expire. In most cases today, to increase user experience of our systems, a lot of services will have long-lived sessions. For example, Netflix or Facebook will have sessions that last for 6 months or even a year. So you just go to facebook.com and you're simply logged in because you logged in 6 months ago. What the attacker can do is they can search for the cookies that still haven't expired. They can paste those cookies, so even drag and drop them or just paste them into that cookies tab, click import, and after they click import, they only need to press this view button. The browser will spawn with all those pre-configurations set. So everything from location, time zone, screen size, whatever, and the cookies will be also set in the browser. The only thing that's left for them to do is then navigate to the site they want to go in, and they will immediately have access without the need for credentials, without the need for TOTP or whatever else. So as the defenders, the challenges that we face here is the thing that it can bypass MFA. The attacker doesn't even have to know the password, and most of the time, the actual attackers will want to buy just the cookies. So they're not necessarily even interested in those URL log pass formats with actual credentials. They are simply looking for cookies because they know in most cases these cookies will go through. Also, another thing to mention here, we can save our passwords and usernames in good password manager, but our session cookies are saved to our browser. So there is nothing to stop them from actually exfiltrating the data out. So in today's infostealer ecosystem, you would see more cookies than the actual credentials being leaked. And the final thing here also, the attackers will match the device, the location, the time zone of the user as closely as they can. So some of the best practices that you can use is you can use good session management practices. I know this is problematic in some situations because as we increase the security, we decrease the usability of our systems. So I know that it is not feasible for a lot of organizations to do this, but it would be good if you could lower the session timeout so that almost every time the user goes to your system, they have to re-authenticate. You should invalidate some cookies after specific key action, or you can re-require MFA authentication prompt. Why? Because when the attacker gets access to our system, they will try to reset the password of the user. What you should do, and the good practice here, is to actually ask for MFA verification when trying to reset the passwords. The best thing that you can do, as I said, these session management best practices go against those good user experience. The best thing and the most non-invasive thing that you can do is you can employ some threat intelligence. What you can do, what it allows you to do is to proactively invalidate cookies that haven't yet expired, to monitor for compromised credentials on your domain, and to do password rotation. Quick note here, if you want to be NIS2 compliant, they say that verifiers should not require memorized secrets to be changed arbitrarily, so periodically. However, verifiers shall force a change if there is an evidence of compromise of the authenticator. I don't know about you, but this screams threat intelligence to me. So if you want to be compliant with NIS2, you have to have some kind of threat intelligence. And not to stop it at words, these are some of the examples that you can use and the local implementations of threat intelligence that you can use if you don't have the funds to get some paid proprietary tools. So what you can do is you can create local scrapers to scrape specific Telegram channels. Telegram is quite lenient with the use of bots. It will pass a long time before they ban you because of bot use. You can then create some Python parser where you will have to create your own grammar, your own tokens, your own rules, exfiltrate the data out as JSON, put it into Fast API, which stores it into your Postgre database, and make it available to either all users or specifically your CTI analysts, which can get, for example, CSV on the end of the day about all the hits that the platform found the day before or the current day. The big problems here are that there are multiple platforms. So you have to create specific scrapers for each of the platforms. For example, Telegram, some hacking forums, onion sites, and you will have to invest a lot of time to maintain those scrapers. An even bigger problem is parsing out the data in a consistent way, because as we've seen, a lot of data is spread across different formats. For example, you can have that raw stealer log data where you have TXT files. You can have that URL log pass where you have just one large txt file with some colon delimited values, or you can have specific combinations of each. So in URL log pass format, you can only have one line where there is just a username and password, for example. So to create a parser that will exfiltrate the data out in a consistent way, it's really, really, really hard. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend this approach. What I would recommend, though, is to use something like Elastic or the whole ELK stack. You can create your own tokenizer. For example, this is a tokenizer that I use to tokenize the data from those URL log pass formats, ingest all the data in, and then simply curl the endpoint. Curl the endpoint for anything that you're interested in, and you will get out the results in seconds. If you are then presented with the problem of parsing across raw stealer log data, where you have those files, you can also use Elastic for this. You can use something like ingest attachment plugin, which allows you to ingest or index the content of the file. And when you search for specific string, it will look inside the file, inside the content of the file, and return to you the name of the file and the actual content of the file that it found the string in. So for example, if you have a specific cookie called, I don't know, ABC session cookie, whatever, you can look for a specific cookie name in all your data that you have. And if you find the cookie, you check that number format, number time format. You see if the cookie is valid. If it is valid, reset that cookie or that user. And this is just some Python script to ingest the data, and you have to ingest it as base64. If you, again, don't have the developer hours, or you don't have someone who is willing to do all of this, you can always buy some proprietary tools. Yeah, the problem is how to justify the money spent. Some of them are Flare, Hudson Rock, Socrator, or many others. I'm not specifically highlighting any here. So what can we do, and how can we succeed even after we fail? Because inevitably someone won't have MFA set up. Someone's child will download Roblox cracks on their machine that they also use to log into organizations' VPN, and the data will leak out. And the big problem there is also that how would you, as a security team, how would you enforce EDR on private PCs, laptops, or phones? And how, even if the victim, even if you know that someone from your organization is infected with infostealer, how would you enforce them to reset, how to reset their machine if that is a private machine? So you can see where a lot of problems lie. If we detect some use of compromised credentials, we should prioritize the threat. You need to see if it's actually a privileged account, if it's service account that was being compromised, or just a standard user account, and act accordingly. Then you have to contain and neutralize the threat. If you see that someone is in, you have to do credentials and cookie reset. You have to enable MFA if it wasn't enabled, and do consistent account monitoring, because a lot of times, for example, if malware is on my system and someone alerts me, hey, change your password, I change my password, but malware is still on my system. It will exfiltrate out the new password. So you constantly have to monitor for this. And the best thing that you can do, and the easiest thing that you can do, block list access to Telegram API if your organization doesn't have the need for it. Or even better, don't even put it on a whitelist. The last thing that you have to do is investigate the breach, identify the source in order to see who else potentially had access to it. Because a lot of infostealer groups will have dedicated ransomware groups that have the first dibs on the data. So if the infostealer group exfiltrates a lot of data, they will first provide it to ransomware groups. They choose the things that they want to specifically use, and then the original infostealer group can either sell it or just give it out for free. That's why you have to do source identification. You have to see what attack path they used in your organization to hopefully prevent another misuse of that attack vector. And you have to do third-party verification. What I've meant here is you have to check your supply chain. I won't even to go into that bag of worms supply chain compromisations are a hard thing to deal with. So, and to conclude everything that we've talked about here, the best thing that you can do is to prepare. It is inevitable that this kind of threat will happen. It's just a matter of moments until we become interesting to someone. The thing that you can do is you can use some kind of threat intelligence, either it be local and proprietary. Another thing that I forgot to mention here, you have to be careful about the legality of you as an organization collecting all those raw stealer log data. You have to check with your legal team. You have to check how you should check your retention policies and all the legal stuff around it, because inevitably you will collect a lot of data about the users that are not necessarily part of your organization. So just be careful about that. Another thing here, if you want to not have all of these problems, you can just buy some tools, because they will, most of the time, they will work faster, and you won't have this legal problem behind it. The thing that you can do for free, just spend some development hours, employ some good session management, good practices, as we've talked about those earlier. When something bad happens, you have to prioritize, contain, investigate, disclose. I'm preaching to the choir here. Everyone knows these steps. If you want to mess with those attackers, though, feel free, and I encourage all of you to add colons, commas, four spaces, or pipes into your passwords. Why? Because when the attackers are trying to create those URL or log pass formats, most of the time they will drop additional colons in the line. So if the line has only 2 columns, and it has to have those 2 columns in order to be parsable, if there is another colon in your password field, they will just drop that colon, and they will have wrong password. And trust me, I've spent many, many nights trying to figure out why my parser is still breaking. Yeah, so that's it from me. We have some time left. Are there any questions?
Okay. At some point, you said that the attacker compromised a machine and transform the target to the onion endpoint, if I understood correctly.
Okay.
But usually these clients are behind NAT, or they have private IP, so they have to expose the machine first, right?
Yes, depends on your system or the level of organizations that you have. So for example, if I have a lot of users, or I allow my administrator to VPN into my organizations from their personal PC, which they have at home. So in that case, that machine can be infected, because maybe they are sharing that machine with their child, as I said, which then downloads something onto that machine, and then that machine will be compromised. Or for example, if you allow the intake of Android devices into your organizations, that is also potentially problematic, because you can have a malware that is sitting dormant on your system, on your Android system, and when you get into your organization, you connect to the Wi-Fi, and then the data will be exfiltrated out. So there are a lot of ways that they can circumvent these protections.
Okay, thank you.
Any more questions? So I have one last question. What would you, as a seasoned data scraper, recommend as a subscription plan?
Oh, as a subscription? No. I want to recommend anything. You should not do anything here. Everything here was educational purposes only. If you can, invest in some threat intelligence and use that threat intelligence platforms for good. So don't use those threat intelligence platforms can also be used from the attackers in order to look for specific credentials, other that they are potentially wanting to exploit. So be careful there. Have a good policies in your organizations when you allow your analysts access to those threat intelligence platforms, and don't do bad stuff. Don't be evil, as Google said, right?
Yeah, that's a political answer.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, I don't know if I'm allowed to promote anything here, but I would say that in my experience, Flare is definitely one of the best, if not the best. Hudson Rock is good because it's made by Israelis, so they have a lot of, let's say, penetration into into this system. But in my experience, Flare is I would recommend, if I was to recommend something to you, I would say Flare maybe.
So you do not ask them how they collect the data, you just get the data.
You just get the data out. Yeah, and they have a lot of setups. So you can set up your, for example, in Flare, you can set up specific keywords to monitor. And when if let's say if you always name cookies specific way, you would add both the name of the cookie and your domain into their keyword search. And every 5 minutes when the new data is ingested, you would get a notification if there was something compromised. So in that case, from the moment that the credentials or cookies are exposed, you will get a notification and you can act in minutes in order to then reset the credentials or reset the cookies.
Okay, if there is no more questions, thank you, Matija. And if you maybe want to ask him something, you can guess him on the pause. And if you want Matija to sell you some credentials, that's about him. So thank you, Matija.
Thank you.